Okay, ma'am. We're going to discuss the situation of the ancient cultures. You have done your research and you have gotten into this type of space of wondering what happened and what is your current understanding based on what you've seen so far. I'll give you mine.
Well, what I've seen so far is overwhelming to the fact that we have no freaking clue as to what really happened on this earth. We have some sprinkles of evidence. We have some people who have spent their whole lives researching this and they still haven't found like concrete evidence because it's all been wiped out by massive forces of natural disasters or cosmic impacts or whatever else happened at the time. The one man particularly who devoted many years of his life to this research of impacts is the infamous Randall Carlson.
Oh, nice.
So when I first heard of him was on Joe Rogan podcast, and he was discussing in particular the Ice Age or the abrupt ending of it, and the possibility that instead of it being a giant lake with an ice dam, so somehow you can have this whole wall of ice intact, holding back waters that came from this other ice melting, suddenly break open and flood this entire area of Western North America. It just doesn't make sense. If ice is going to melt, it's going to melt everywhere, not just behind this giant wall. But his idea was that several impacts occurred and caused massive flash flooding that washed away everything in the path. So this is just millions and millions of metric tons of water filled with boulders weighing many tons would just crush and grind everything in the path um, before them, just wiping out everything. So I just recently drove through the area in my car from Florida to Montana, and the changes of geology are just amazing. And there's no way this crap just happened like a little by little. Like you have to have massive force behind the landscape. In order to shape this landscape, you have to have just massive force behind it, not just time and a little bit of rain, a little bit of wind here and there over the years. There's just no way. Everything just looks just like it's just been devastated. Now, Randall says, believes that a massive celestial body crashed, broke up, and crashed either into the ice or just created what's called an aerial burst, which is when a meteorite or foreign object, whatever, heats up in the atmosphere and then just explodes before hitting the ground, not leaving a crater behind, but it does just cause this immense, intense heat that would just flash melt all this ice that was accumulated during the Ice Age and just cause all this to just flood within a short amount of time and just dig up all these mountains, create these canyons and craters, and leave behind signs of massive deposits. Because I've seen these deposits when you drive, it's like continuous, just like dunes, and they run in parallel. And when you see what people have cut through them, it's just rounded off rocks and boulders and pebbles. It's just an amazing sight to see. So if you look at the whole North America, you have all these mountains and canyons on one side, then you have the plains. So the plains could have been created with all this topsoil having been washed away by the massive flood waters And then as you move further east, then you come back to some more mountains, and then everything sort of slopes down towards the ocean. So it's just unbelievable to imagine what it must have been like. And then if that happened 12, 13,000 years ago, plenty of time for vegetation to regrow, where it got washed away, and there's just no way to get to the bottom of it, because not much research is being done, and there's no funding about it for it.
Okay, man. So here's the controversy. So I've been listening to, because I believe the same things, and I think I don't think anybody, was countering that there was catastrophic events that happened, the ice age, and all this stuff. But the question is, and this is the problem where the challenge guys like Graham Hancock. Okay, these things happen, but what really is the proof? And that there was a culture prior to this incident, right? Because the problem is they're saying there's nothing to point, to a culture existing prior to this catastrophe. They're saying, okay, well, he can't prove that these structures were built before. There's no way to prove it, and they also cite, oh well, we'll dig under the pyramids, certain pyramids, and if there is culture existing under that, where we could prove, carbon dating, this is 10,000 years before, doesn't necessarily mean that the pyramid existed 10,000 years before. It's just that there was maybe the guy that started a fire 10,000 years before, and then thousands of years later, they built these pyramids. So what do you think? How could we prove, or is there any proof that you know of that shows that, hey, these structures existed before, the catastrophe of 10,000 years ago?
Well, so you have to find the evidence, physical evidence. Now, mind you, imagine, just look at your world today. Like, where were you born? Where did you grow up? If you spent the last 30 years in a particular town, you can see how things change when people are present, and there's no evidence left behind when people are there. So imagine you used to go to a school that was a historic building, then that gets just run down over time. It's in disrepair. And what happens to it? A school gets closed down, it gets demolished, everything gets dug up, including the foundation, to replace whatever plumbing is underneath. It's all deteriorated, like they use lead and terracotta pipes for sewage, so all that gets ripped out. And what do? You have a dirt lot. There's no evidence left behind whatsoever that anything was ever there. So, massive cataclysm that would preserve something like that would have to come in the form of for example, the Mount Vesuvius, right? Mount Vesuvius erupted, buried the Pompeii underneath just tens of feet of ash, and it preserved it. Now, it wasn't discovered until 2,000 years later, right? Mm-hmm. People have to dig, and somehow digging for, usually it's construction. Mm-hmm. Why else would you dig? And little by little, they discover all these things simply by chance. Now, Italy is a small place. Now, if you look at the whole North American continent, it's just vast. It's huge. And if something's buried under several hundred feet of dirt, rubble, debris, there's no reason to dig down there unless you're digging a well of some sort. And even then, how would you know? Yeah. Unless you examine the washout. As you can imagine, a drill goes down, they use water to cool the drill bit, and they wash out the shavings and the chips. But who bothers to analyze them? So it's almost like every time there's any kind of digging or drilling going on, you need to have like a team of archaeologists and geologists examining this stuff to see if there's anything. So a catastrophe can destroy and also preserve evidence of a civilization.
Right.
So that's the problem you face. And then with North America, they used to believe that Clovis were the original inhabitants, but then if you keep digging below the layers of the Clovis culture, you find more stuff. So keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. For a while, you may not find anything, but the Earth is so dynamic that everything just changes. And like, what are you supposed to do? How do you get the funding? You know,
This is the problem. This is the guy I was listening to was commenting. It's not, because I guess Hancock accuses the archaeologists of not wanting to do the research or, not doing the right things. But this guy says it's not that we don't want to. It's the funding. We can only do what we can with what we have. And if somebody were to sponsor, if a millionaire were to sponsor archaeologists to go dig and prove this, it's like, oh, we'll go do it. It's just, they're at the behest of these universities on whatever their funding or whatever grants they can get. But I think the only thing we have right now, unless bar going into like Antarctica and finding stuff and under the ice, and that would be the only way to prove, hey, this existed before. If there's anything left in there that wasn't crushed by the ice, I would go with what Hancock says, that he believes that certain structures are aligned with the stars, and if you go far back enough, the sky would be different, and that's why now they don't make sense. But if you go back in time to past 11,000 years ago, these structures actually make sense, right? They're aligned with whatever constellation they're similar to, and I think that's the only thing we have now, because everything else is going to be stories, or like you're saying, we haven't found anything yet. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think like with everything that happens, like you're saying, people come and go. There was some probably more advanced civilization, more advanced that we know of, that probably did seed, certain people throughout history. And that's why we have the common stories of, hey, these guys came from somewhere. Like when, the Spanish came over to Montezuma, that's why they just let them in, because they thought, oh, these are the gods, they're back. Quetzalcoatl's back, the bearded gods, there they are, they're back. And they were confused because that was the story that they had. And whether that was something they made up, it would have been kind of strange because, most of those people didn't have beards back then. So there must have been a story that got transported throughout, decades of passing down, that maybe there was some guys, maybe Vikings, who knows, that came down and showed them some stuff and then left and said, we'll be back. And then here the Spanish, 500 years later show back up, and that's a lifetime of, things could happen in 500 years that they forgot. Maybe it wasn't 10,000, who knows? That's the problem I have. I think there's something there, but the problem is, trying to prove it. I don't think we have enough. The only thing is, and I never really looked into it 100%, is the claim that the pyramids in Egypt, they're covered in seashells and all the stuff. So I'd like to see, I don't know if you ever looked into that, to see if that's just like, natural, that's in the sand out there from millions of years ago, or is that nobody able to explain why there's, signs of like maybe at one point it was underwater. You heard of this?
talking about seashells within the sandstone that the pyramids are built out of? Or?
Apparently they're just on the surface. They say that, you go out there and you see like evidence of like was there an ocean here at some point after the pyramids were built?
So, once, say, you could do this experiment. You go to the ocean side, say where there is already like life there, and just take a cinder block and just submerge it there, and come check on it a year later, and you see all kind of stuff growing on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't take long
Yeah.
for something like that to happen. I was just thinking when we were talking about structures being built upon reference to stars and constellation, stuff like that. So you would have to have a team of people, uh, computer programmers, geologists, map makers, a team of smart people, and you give them a task. Okay, build me a model that would account for everything that we know of the Earth, the solar system, and the Milky Way galaxy. Map out the patterns of movement of everything, and then work it back, including plate tectonics, because
Yeah.
not only does the Earth spin, it wobbles. The orbit is not circular. The sun itself moves through the galaxy. So do all the other stars.
Yeah.
And then make a model that would predict accurately within, I don't know, 1% or so, the movement on the line of everything, considering that everything freaking moves. And it doesn't move at the same rate. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Plate tectonics are not always moving at the same speed,
Yeah.
right? And you have impacts. Every time something huge crashes into the Earth, it alters its orbit a little bit. I mean, it's just how it is. So everything is moving. Now you have to be able to predict. And that could basically give us maybe a starting point. Let's look at significant constellations, and just based on them, perhaps we could surmise a location to where we could dig. So now, you're not going to get any kind of a government to sponsor this. You're not going to get any established association or group or anybody who's currently in the lead or has the monopoly over research. So there have to be people with deep pockets who are curious, who are willing to spend money just to satisfy their curiosity. Because at the end of the day, what does it change other than the ability to be like, okay, I told you so.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't really matter.
And then also like look at the average person, like who's really interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's like then you come to the cultural aspects of how do you get a population to be interested in anything?
Yeah.
Unless you actively are I don't know, pushing it.
Yeah.
How do you reach people? Like who's got the time? Like we're curious, we want to know.
Yeah.
And then it would only make sense.
Okay. So what do you think would be the ultimate, what would be the ultimate evidence that would prove, let's say we find something? Because the problem with the carbon dating, they're always going to say like, well, that was, yeah, it's organic material is already there. We can't tell. This is older stuff. Like, what do you think would be like proof of saying, hey, this definitely culture is, I mean, we got Göbekli Tepe, whatever, how do you say it?
Yeah.
That's, and they're still insisting that, hunter-gatherers created this, and they're saying that, and I could see, okay, well, maybe you could organize the hunter-gatherers to
No way. Well,
I know there's no way, but I mean, that's what they say. So what would we need to be able to definitely say, okay, you can't say it was just some hunters that got together and was like, hey, let's build this place. What would we need? What do you think? Something that would say like, okay, this is it. We know for sure.
Here's a fact. Okay. Try hunting and gathering.
All right.
Okay.
All day. That's all you do.
Don't have fucking time
No.
to invest manpower into building anything like this. There's just no way.
No.
You have to have somebody with rudimentary map knowledge. You have to have a person who is going to work the stone.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have manpower. You have to have
The people that are still hunting and gathering to
Right.
feed those guys.
So, but here's the fact about hunting and gathering is that food and nature is just so scarce and it's moving quickly and you have to catch it.
Yeah.
And whatever area you go to, either you're going to scare off the game or you're going to kill it. You're going to hunt it out to where you will just have to keep moving.
Yeah.
Hunter-gatherers have to move. They have to be mobile, or they have to rely on a schedule of, say, bison, like in that movie, Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, they got to follow
Those people, they were there in the area, and then they were waiting for the bison to come,
Yeah.
and they would come once a year. So you have to go out there and kill and preserve all this meat. And then in the meantime, you also have to fight the freaking Pawnees or whoever are trying to steal your food that you just prepared.
Yeah.
So you don't have time to,
Yeah.
to go find stones,
Yeah.
shave them, cut them, and put them in there.
Yeah.
So
No,
hunter-gatherer claim is totally insane.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't see how you'd have to have agriculture to maintain these people, an organized structure, like maybe a government that would divvy up, okay, you guys do this, you guys do that, and then you still would need maybe an army or somebody to protect, that area of, marauders, people coming in to steal your stuff. So now we're talking about whole civilization, right? And then they keep on insisting, no, it's you're doubting the hunter gatherers. They were smart people. Yeah, but not to like you say. You have to follow the food. You have to be mobile. It's crazy. Um, I think about what we send in. What was that satellite we sent out into space that Carl Sagan worked on? One of the first ones that left the solar system. I can't remember what was that. The Voyager 1 or 2. I can't remember which Voyager it was.
I think it was one of the Voyagers that carries the
Yeah.
the recording of the sounds and
Yeah, sounds
the
and
picture of the human.
And then so I think it's like, well, what are you gonna do? What can you push? You put pictures. And if you look at it, it's just a picture of a human, some things, we're assuming someone else is gonna be able to decipher that. And we're looking at
Well, whoever finds it's going to see, okay, this was made by intelligence.
yeah,
And then if they backtrack, say it takes 1,000,000 years for that thing to get somewhere. So it's traveling very slowly. The next solar system is like 4 or 5 light years away.
massive.
So say they find it when 1,000,000 years have gone by and they come over here and they find nothing.
Yeah,
Fire consumes everything.
yeah,
And it leaves a thin sliver of trace as a black line in the sediment. So, Göbekli Tepe, if those guys lived in wooden structures or, and then there was, whatever catastrophe happened, they, you'd have no trace.
Mhm.
Bones eventually just wither away.
And like I said, I don't think anyone's contested it, but it seems like they buried it. They covered it up
Right.
for some reason. So they wanted to preserve it. Somebody did. Took the time to bury this whole thing underground.
And it wouldn't be a rival faction because
No,
a
they would just
rival
destroy it.
faction would either repurpose it like the Muslims did with churches. The Sophia Mosque in Istanbul used to be Constantinople
Yeah.
town, and now it's Istanbul, and that used to be a church, and now it's a mosque. So they were smart enough to just take off the trim.
Which brings me to another point that I think Hancock points out, and you could see it, and you can see it in Egypt in a way, but of course they have their explanation for it. But that's where you see you'll see a structure, and then there will be a style, and all of a sudden there's another style, either on top or to the side of it, or it appears that there was repairs done to it, but obviously the style and the skill doesn't match what was possibly an older structure, a more impressive structure. And you see that in Egypt, of course, they say, oh, well, this is the proto pyramids. They saw the step pyramids. They're not very pretty, but then they got better, and then of course they made the Cheops and all the other ones. But then some people claim it's like, no, it's the other way around. These were here from another culture. The Egyptians show up and say, oh, this is amazing. Let's try to make some more of these. And then they make some crappy ones. And then at the end, they want to go into the Valley of the Kings. And it says, like, oh, we'll just use the mountains as the pyramids. And we'll carve into the mountains because that's easier than building one of these things again. Because maybe we don't know how to build it, or we forgot, or whatever. So what do you think about that? I mean, I think that's another good, not 100% evidence, but there's just something odd that you do see where possibly people show up and there's already these structures there. I'm like, hey, let's use this stuff. I don't know how to build it. Maybe we'll build some stuff on top of it, or we can try to imitate it, but it's obviously not the same.
Well, see, that's the problem with not being able to date this stuff, because you assume that more sophisticated construction equals newer. Like you see this is kind of subpar, or the lines are not really straight. You know, and then you look at this stuff, right angles, just perfectly flat planes. You can't put a razor blade in between the two stones, and they're immense, and it's easy to assume that, okay, this was a practice run. Now this is like when they actually got the craft,
Yeah.
where, you know, there's just no way to tell. I guess if you find more sophisticated stuff on the bottom below whatever is on top, you can very well assume that what's on the bottom was here first,
Yeah.
and then this other stuff was built later.
Yeah.
If you're a space traveler, and I don't know, I mean, do you want to get involved, or do you want to not get involved? Like, why would you
Yeah.
want to do something to alter a course of uh, a species? Maybe you need them as allies. Maybe you're counting on them having your back.
Yeah.
Um,
Or maybe they don't have the same morals that we're assuming that they have. It's just, yeah, we'll go down there and tinker with this, see what it's all about. We'll travel around different galaxies and like, oh, look at these guys.
yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe, you know, maybe they just, yeah, sure. Maybe they just don't care. You know, they
Yeah.
like, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's go find a planet where, see what's there. So they come across Earth, and they see these hunter-gatherers there, these apes with spears or whatever. And then they okay, well, look at these guys, they got nothing.
Yeah.
Let's get them started. Let's give them a jump start and see how long it takes them
Mhm.
to get to where we are today. And they have the luxury of, say, they have like technology where they can expand their life cycle.
Yeah.
Like they can live for thousands or millions of years, which it's possible.
It's possible. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you go around and, you know, find this planet with these primates on it.
Yeah.
Like, well, look at this. Isn't this neat? Like, let's see what they can do. Will they create me? Are these my creators?
Yeah.
One thing, you'd probably be disappointed if you
Yeah.
if you learn this disappointment thing.
Well, you know, my favorite, Giorgio Tsoukalos, he's always saying that he's like, God, once we meet the aliens, I believe that once we see them, we're going to be looking at ourselves. So he never really explains that, but you know, some people have theories that maybe the aliens that we see are just ourselves from the future, maybe traveling back, like you said, trying to find out what happened, or some advanced, you know, version of ourselves that came here a long time ago, seeded us, and you know, is coming back. Or maybe some people say it never left. Or you know, we're just once again we're assuming that you have to travel these millions of light years through space. But if somebody's invented a different way to travel through portals or whatever, it wouldn't take that long. They could just go, boom, we're here. You know, it's a different story.
Go behind the curtain
Yeah.
and come back with the other side. Well, I mean, it's again, you know, it appears that everything is possible.
Yeah.
You just have to figure it out. You know, you have to find the key, and that's again is being research. True researchers being stifled by people who are in control of academia. They just don't want to open the doors to possibilities. You know, they sort of like they get together and they decide, okay, well, we're gonna go this way. Like, why not go the other way? Like, no, we're
Yeah.
gonna go this way. So,
I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna have to wrap it up.
no, yeah.
What were the next discussion? What do you want?
Well,
Mysteries.
we should try to maybe talk about what works below the sea surface.
Oh, okay. Next time, talk about it. You seen this one? What is this?
Oh, the ripples.
No. We'll see. So, this is actually pretty interesting. This is